Welcome to Contemporary Myth. This week, there are several essays that highlight different aspects of myth using multiple analysis. Heretofore, we have focused on one method of analysis at a time for the most part. As the text states, the following methodologies are the focus: Campbell's Hero Quest, Levi-Strauss's anthropological structuralist analysis, Jung's psychological analysis, and Propp's morphological analysis. For fairy tale, Turner is still an important figure to consider because of the differentiations between exegetic, operational, and positional. To review, exegetic is an explanation from inside the culture. Operational is an explanation from outside the culture. Positional explores the relationship of a ritual or myth to all the other beliefs in a culture. In evaluating the Goose Girl, we can find a number of historical references, parallels, or links. Using these links, Warner concludes that the story is that the association with geese is a charge that proper society makes against women who refuse to be limited by the role set out for them. It allows us to see the girl's resistance to her social role in a historical context and to suggest that such resistance itself contributed to the formation of society. The focus of this exploration was historical and a bit feminist. In evaluating The Raven, we begin with the Proppian deconstruction of the main plot elements, moving to a Jungian analysis, concluding that both the rescuer and the princess are elements of the same person. The essay about Who Framed Roger Rabbit begins with a psychological perspective, moving on to explore race relations and social differences, concluding with a structuralist lean. Please review the chart on 718 about the taxonomy of meanings for myth. You may use the table furnished in your notes in your response for this week. Contemporary myth deals with revealing a number of internal and external issues that we as humans must come to interact with. A question that arises here is, how can we, as fish, see the water we are swimming in? How can we identify the manipulations that surround us? It should be noted that a ritual looks different to those inside a culture than to those outside it. And the role of ritual is different in a homogeneous traditional society than it is in a heterogeneous industrial society. We begin with comparison to Gilgamesh, making sure to suggest that both are based in historical fact. Boone's most famous accounts follow a pattern that seemed to define the nature of the West. In this essay, we look at Filson and some of the later Shapiro work to see the values expressed in both. It should be remembered that the meaning of the myth will depend on the reader's perspective, but also their beliefs about the history and destiny of the United States. On learning from the Indians, there were noticeable exchanges to ideas, and necessarily the values and practices of both Native Americans and pioneers changed. This also changed the global economy. Even still, understanding of the importance of the environment, animals, and interactions with others still remained different and sometimes stressed. Though he was raised with the good Indians of the Shawnee Nation, they, along with other hunters who shared ideals, are where some accounts suggest he developed his skill. All that said, his other encounters shouldn't be discounted. As we see in the text going forward, he overcomes many obstacles to achieve many goals. The text includes, with the summaries of the Daniel Boone story, information about Rebecca Boone, an interesting character in her own right. What do you think about her being depicted as more masculine to explain her strength? I can see that during that time. Some people were unwilling to accept the importance of women to the health of the overall society, especially at that time, so having a representation of strength for women of the time would have been a useful activity. That said, as the text reiterates, a couple of times she's excluded in favor of reaching out to male pioneers. In the case of science fiction, the writers do completely craft their universe in some instances. In the case of video games, they even can control the physics of the created universe, etc., so they have quite a bit of free play to create. Just as in the case of Westerns, our segue from Daniel Boone, we can recognize various elements that remind us of the mythological underpinnings we have explored in other works. What do I mean by mythological underpinnings? Well, namely the themes, motifs, constituent units, archetypes, or other deconstructive methodologies often associated with works that fall under the umbrella of mythology. The text goes into the us versus them mentality of Star Trek, citing the Borg as an example of Levi-Strauss's nature versus culture schematic. From there, we look at Firefly as a definitive sci-fi western, complete with strong female characters and a leader who, though strongly anti-authoritarian, makes it a point to use his authority for the good of the crew and his family in every possible instance. This section, you will choose a story and evaluate it using multiple analysis. You will be asked to complete the chart in Chapter 40 and in your notes, and choose 3 different methods of analysis to explain.